Well, that didn't take long.
Over time they erode and destroy hearts of good souls in the dark.
4 months. 4 months since I finally finished discussing all of the Persona games, and now we have another one. Not that I'm unhappy about a new game coming out, and I always enjoy talking about Persona, but this kinda ruins the setup I made in the last video, doesn't it?
Literally 2 weeks after I did the Eternal Punishment review, we got an announcement trailer for the Western release of Persona 5 Strikers, which Japan has had since February 2020, under the name Persona 5 Scramble: The Phantom Strikers. Categorizing this game is pretty tricky to do, because Strikers acts as both a spin-off and a sequel to Persona 5. It's not clear whether it's based on OG Persona 5 or Royal, but they've written around it so that either of them could fit in, so I guess that's fine. Anyway, sure, we've had the Arena games and Persona 4 Dancing All Night, which were also spin-offs/sequels, but neither matched the quality and attention to detail that Persona 5 Strikers does. This genuinely feels like a proper sequel, albeit with a far different gameplay style. Yep, instead of the traditional turn-based combat Persona is very well known for, Strikers is an action hack-and-slasher reminiscent to the Dynasty Warriors series. In fact, it's even got the same people behind Dynasty Warriors, Koei Tecmo, marking this the 4th crossover title they've done up to this point. In 2014, they did Hyrule Warriors, which was Dynasty Warriors mixed with Zelda. 2017 had Fire Emblem Warriors that did the same thing with the world of Fire Emblem, and I'll also be covering later in my current marathon based on Fire Emblem. Then just a few months ago in November 2020, we got another Hyrule Warriors game, only now set in the Breath of the Wild universe. I talked about that game not too long ago as well. If you maybe want to take a look at it, I'll just leave this here. You've really got to respect the balls on Koei Tecmo lately. They've not only made a prequel game to one of the most well-received Zelda games in a long time, but also a sequel to one of the greatest JRPGs in recent years.
Normally, I'm not like super excited about a new Warriors game coming out, but Strikers was the sole exception. You guys already know how much I love Persona 5, in case it wasn't obvious already, so to have a follow-up of any kind to my favorite game of all time, even if it was a Warriors game, no doubt got me interested.
You know what was ridiculous though? Part of the reason it took so long for Strikers to come to the West was because ATLUS wasn't sure if people really wanted it. After the Japanese release, they even sent out a survey asking if we would like for it to come overseas. Gee, do we want a continuation to one of the most lauded Persona games, hell, arguably one of the most lauded games ever? Well, gosh, I guess I don't know. That's a tough question. Of course we would! That's like if Square Enix asked Final Fantasy X fans if they wanted a Final Fantasy X too. It kinda goes without saying that they'd want it. Guys, you know I love you, but I just don't get you sometimes. Well, no matter. We have it now, better late than never, so what do you say we get the show on the road? I'll be using the PS4 version for this video, but you can also get it on the Switch or PC if that's your preference. The edging in the PS4 version is a little jagged, which I'm not sure if the PC version fixes if you have good enough specs, but it makes up for it by running at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second, and it's really weird to see after playing Persona 5 and Royal for so long. The Switch version runs pretty okay from what I've seen. The frame rates just halve to 30 per second to keep with limitations, but I'm glad I stuck with the PS4 version, not just for the added trophy support to keep me playing, but also because I think that 60 frames works best for a fast-paced action game like this. I enjoy myself a good hack and slasher, and I believe that having a smooth frame rate is really important for your reflexes. Take a look at games like DMC Definitive Edition, then compare it to the original and you'll see what I mean.
As per usual, I'll save the spoilers for the upcoming extended thoughts video, but I'll still show off some minor stuff like a few of the bosses and dungeons, while also briefly mentioning some plot details you come across. No major twists or turns. Additionally, even though Strikers doesn't give away anything from Persona 5 or Royal, it does at least expect you to know what happens during the ending, and I will be too, so just keep all of that in mind, and let's quickly go over the story premise for Strikers.
Alright, so at the end of Persona 5/Royal, the protagonist, aka Renamamiya, or Akira Kuruzu if you're a manga nut, went back home to his family after he and the Phantom Thieves disposed of the metaverse and lost their powers. It's a tearful goodbye for everyone, but cut to 4 months later, Ren has returned to Tokyo for summer vacation and reunites with his friends after they throw him a welcome back party. Once they've done some catching up, their first order of business for spending the vacation together is to sort out a camping trip. To make preparations, Futaba uses a new app installed on her phone called Emma, this universe's equivalent to Siri. And fun fact, they got the actual female Siri voice Susan Bennett to record lines for this game. That's pretty cool.
Again, I am Emma, your helpful virtual assistant.
Don't know why these guys are so surprised with how Emma works when the real world has had this for so many years now. Well, then again, this does take place in the year 20, so maybe they've got one of those older iPhone models that just got Siri installed? I'm getting off track. Later that night, while Ren's trying to sleep, he's summoned to the Velvet Room once again, where the assistant, Lavenza, warns him of the upcoming danger he and his friends are soon to meet with, and Igor doesn't seem to want to get himself involved for some reason. The next day, Ren, Morgana, and Ryuji are out looking for camping supplies, but coincidentally encounter Alice Hiragi, a popular idol that everyone seems to be head over heels for. Alice is handing out cards to a select number of people that contains a keyword allowing them to be friends with her on Emma, while also acting as an invite to a special event she's holding. By sheer luck, Ren receives one of these cards, but upon entering the keyword, he, Morgana, and Ryuji are transported to what seems to be the metaverse again. Only now there seems to be an alternate Tokyo as opposed to a single palace. Shadow Alice reveals her face almost immediately after, and she plans to steal her fans' desires, which have physical forms in this world, kinda like the hearts in Kingdom Hearts games. Now, I'm really confused about this part. I get the idea of having your desires stolen from Alice makes you eat, breathe, and sleep anything related to her, with some people even going into debt from buying all sorts of Alice merch. Getting slightly ahead of myself, what I don't get is the thieves first thinking that the fans in the metaverse are real people when Ren, Ryuji, and Morgana escape and tell them what happened, but later they figure out that they're only shadows, explaining why they were never declared missing in the real world. But then how does all of this work exactly? We established in Persona 5 that the shadows only come from the palace ruler's altered cognition, so how does stealing desires from these shadows that are presumably made up from the ruler's mind affect the people in the real world? Is it to do with the keyword they were given? Does typing it into Emma somehow transfer your shadow and everything with it to the metaverse? Well, it can't be, because none of the Phantom Thieves have shadows in this world when they enter, and they can still wander around as normal humans. As far as I can remember, this was never explained properly, and if it was, then I don't think the game does a very good job with it, especially when the first hour and a half or so already fills you with tons of info. We should probably move on anyway before I think about it too much and the world building starts making less sense. Our three thieves get themselves captured by Shadow Alice's lackeys, who proceed to throw them into a dumpster. As they make their escape, they run into an AI girl named Sophia, humanity's companion. And get this, I mean, you're not gonna believe it, this hasn't been done with a Persona character before. It's such a unique trait to Sophia, you can't even guess what about her is different. It would take you years to figure it out.
She's lost her memories!
I'm serious, they're doing the amnesia thing again, for an AI no less. When I first saw this, I thought they were going to reuse the exact same arc they did for Aigis in Persona 3 with no real differences. Sophia wasn't going to understand humans, act all robotic until near the end of the game, and by then we'll learn that out of all of us, she was the most human. But that's not entirely what they do here. Sophia doesn't always understand human emotions, but she herself seems to have numerous feelings, despite not knowing what they all mean, and is capable of stuff like devising strategies, thinking for herself, and even cracking a joke here and there. Sophia has a definite personality to her, unlike Aigis. At least not until Persona 3's late game. She's eager, she's willing to learn, she gets excited, confused, melancholy, a lot of things that humans go through. Has it all been done before? Sure, but I think there's enough of a fresh spin put into it that it doesn't bother me that much. Which, if you disagree, then I can kind of understand that too. It's easy to see this as a recycled plot element from not just other Persona games, but other RPGs in general. But I believe that portraying Sophia with this almost childlike innocence makes her stick out enough to be interesting and certainly likable. I can never be mean to Sophia whether I have the option to do so or not. I've used this description a few times in my Persona videos, but there's no other way to describe Sophia other than just adorable. Right, anyway, with the help of Sophia and her added combat abilities, thanks to her, I guess, AI persona, she, alongside the others, make it out of the dumpster and also find an exit out of the metaverse. They immediately report to everyone else about what they saw, with Sophia living inside Ren's phone so she can still communicate in the real world. Good lord, bathroom trips must be awkward. They figure out that these new palaces aren't really palaces at all, but rather known as jails, with the rulers referred to as monarchs. They also learn that Emma can be used to travel in and out of the jails by inputting a keyword similar to how the metanav let them go to palaces. Alice in the real world doesn't seem to be any better than her shadow either, as she seemed to be quite the selfish tool willing to manipulate others to suit her every need. She's not the only one with the jail though, as the thieves are later approached by a police officer named Zenkichi Hasegawa, who's investigating the sudden change in behavior that's happening all over Japan, with the Phantom Thieves being the prime suspect. This leads to Zenkichi offering the thieves a deal. They help him with his investigation, and he ensures that their names are cleared, but little do they know that the chief of police has ordered Zenkichi to bring them in anyway once the job is done. This doesn't bother Zenkichi since he believes he won't get attached to our heroes, though given how the trailers show him off as a playable character, I think it's a safe bet to assume he'll warm up to them to some degree. Thanks for that, ATLUS. So the Phantom Thieves are back in action, and with assistance from their new RV, courtesy of Sojiro pulling some strings, the gang ride all across Japan and tackle any jails they find, while beating the Monarchs and retrieving everyone's stolen desires, with Zenkichi helping gather info on the side. It won't be easy, however, because the game assures us that jails are far different from palaces. They're what happens when a person's desires become too distorted and the party have to search all throughout the metaverse to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, literally in Alice's case. Perhaps we'll find some treasure that relates to their desires, learn more about the Monarchs, maybe even influence them by sending a calling card, and their defeat will cause the Monarchs to disappear, providing a change of heart to their real-world counterparts. Hang on, these aren't different at all. Yeah, this game desperately tries to convince you that palaces and jails aren't the same, but when you break it down, they really are. The Phantom Thieves are still diving into distorted desires, only now it's the size of a city, which even then you could probably argue Persona 5 did something similar with Mementos, and you also got to see a warp Shibuya just before stepping into the third palace. In the end, you're still trying to change the hearts of the wicked and save any victims fallen under them. And actually, let's talk about the villains real quick. None of these guys come close to being as devious as any of the palace rulers in Persona 5 and Royal, nor do things get nearly as dark. Alice is a pretty good example for this as Striker's first major baddie. She's a self-centered, attention-hungry brat who manipulates her fans and threatens her managers, but as far as we know, she doesn't physically or sexually abuse people. Well, okay, maybe physically if you're basing it on the manager, but she doesn't go as far as potentially raping anybody like Kamoshida did. Natsume, the next monarch you face in Sendai, is using Emma to have people read his book and utterly adore him, but his work turns out to be plagiarized just like with Madarame. Then you find out that the fans have bought several copies of the book when they don't need to, running their money dry, similar to what happened with Alice's followers, which is pretty terrible, but is that really top priority for the Phantom Thieves to deal with? The following monarch is then Hyodo, who's running for mayor of Sapporo, and she's having Emma steal the desires of her voters to ensure that she wins. Now that's a bit more devilish, but Hyodo doesn't seem to have any shady connections like Shido did, nor is she willing to commit numerous crimes to get ahead. You see what I'm getting at? I mean, the villains in Persona 5 may be a tad cartoonish, but they were still doing some very nasty things by abusing their power. Murder, blackmail, forced marriage, bending the truth, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. All things that happen in Persona 5 and Royal, but Striker's villains are just kinda dicks, with maybe the exception of the last couple you face. You know those minor characters in Mementos that only existed as meager requests? The people that have distorted desires but not distorted enough to warrant a palace of their own? That's pretty much how these guys feel to me. The threat level isn't quite as high and don't seem like these big obstacles for the Phantom Thieves to conquer. The jails, exactly like the palaces, are also once again themed on the 7 deadly sins to suit the rulers' natures, but it feels somewhat forced this time around, as if they had to make this one giant callback to Persona 5. It's especially apparent with how many of the Monarchs don't get quite enough screen time and how quickly the game transitions from one jail to the next, particularly moving from Natsume to Hyodo. If you're looking at Strikers strictly as a Warriors game, then this may not be that big of an issue. In fact, it might still be a little too slow going for you. But when looking at this as a Persona game, there's a noticeable lack of depth compared to its predecessor. They do somewhat fix this by introducing what's known as bird cages, doors that hide something from the Monarch's past that they don't want anyone to see, usually a tragic incident that shapes them into the person that they are today, all of them guarded by a monstrous warden you have to face. These memories do a decent job at painting the Monarchs in a different light, not perfectly, but most of them are fairly believable. Again though, I point to Alice as an example of her motive coming off as slightly contrived. You find out in her birdcage that she was bullied a lot in school, and that's apparently all you need to feel sympathetic towards her. I'm sorry, but no, I need more than that. The female Phantom Thieves have gone through way worse times than just being bullied that instantly made me feel bad for them. Having An then act as the voice of reason makes sense since she's both a model and has been bullied herself because of her gorgeous looks, but these moments with Alice being emotionally torn apart had a hint of phoniness to it all. Striker's writing is still good as a whole, and I'm not saying that Persona 5's and Royal Royals were perfect, because it wasn't, but it's a little more clumsy in Strikers than it was before. And is it me, or are the Phantom Thieves less perceptive and cautious this time around? I counted a few times where they were rather careless about concealing their alter egos, and oh look, they got themselves found out. It's a good thing that this lady named Ichinose is going to help the Phantom Thieves, otherwise that would have been a really stupid mistake. Then there's this part where the thieves attend a seminar for more info about Medice, the company who developed Emma. Okay, sounds fine and dandy, but they also think it's a good idea to discuss their next strategy in the middle of the lecture, and right next to groups of strangers. Futaba, you are literally within earshot of someone. Maybe you should all pay attention to the seminar first, and then talk about your plan of action afterwards when everybody's gone. How did you people get this far? Oh, and as for them not being as observant, take this for instance in the Kyoto jail where you have to light up the eyes on 2 fox statues in order to proceed. Sounds simple enough based on that description, right? Well, it takes the thieves a good few minutes to figure that out, which probably doesn't seem that bad, but trust me, it is painful. See for yourself.
Hang on. Doesn't that fox statue remind you of anything?
It does appear similar to the pair that currently blocks our route. Shining fox eyes?
They do look like they're shining. I wonder why.
If something affected this statue, then maybe the other one that looks like it was affected too.
Hey! Something did happen to the statue!
Its eyes are shining too, but it looks like the other one wasn't affected.
Looks like we're hunting for the other fox statue now.
So you think we'll be able to use the path if we light up both statues' eyes?
Oh, good God, yes, just go! Christ!
Weirdly, the best parts of the story to me is when the focus isn't on jails and monarchs. I have a lot of fun just seeing the Phantom Thieves enjoy their vacation by eating food together, going to the beach, seeing the sights with some of your friends, all while exchanging banner. It's also very interesting when they're dealing with more serious and personal issues, like trying to restore a connection between Zenkichi and his daughter, because her mother was killed and she's disappointed that her dad hasn't caught the culprit yet, believing that he's simply given up on the chase. Hey, where have I heard that before? Bringing up conversations like this and putting each member of the Phantom Thieves in the spotlight while having their bonds grow even further as a team is where I think Striker's story, well, really strikes. Once again, helping that is the voice acting being as excellent as usual. I can't believe how the actors have still got it even after 4 years worth of Persona 5 games. There was OG Persona 5, then there was Dancing in Starlight, then Royal. They also provided the English dubs for the anime, so that basically meant starting everything over again. And now they've done Strikers, still giving their best performances. And let's not forget the Japanese actors doing Q2 on top of all that. These guys must be so sick of voicing the Phantom Thieves by now. Even the cast of C's and the investigation team sounded exhausted by Persona 4 Arena, but everyone in Strikers seems just as invested here as they always have been, and that's pretty amazing. You've really gotta admire their dedication, and thank God they're finally giving Haru more to do this time. It took a few games, but we're finally there, and she's got some funny lines here and there too.
Enjoy.
Sorry about that. We just despised the police is all.
You know what else? Morgana wasn't that bad this time either. I guess thanks to having a whole game of him being a jackass, he was able to spend this game redeeming himself, and it worked. There's very little arguing between him and the other thieves. He also has some funny lines, and he doesn't act too much like a big shot anymore. Well done, ATLUS and Koei Tecmo. Oh, let's talk about Sophia and Zenkichi too. Sophia's actress doesn't have a great deal of experience compared to others, and Zenkichi's actor has even less experience, but damn it, they both do their jobs really well. Their voices are very much suited to their characters, and if you told me that they were part of the Phantom Thieves, I would definitely believe it. They truly sell their parts, though minor nitpick, I think Zenkichi's actor maybe says his lines just a little too fast sometimes. Otherwise, great stuff. I only wish I could hear all of the lines from everybody. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes you can barely hear what the characters are saying because they're speaking so softly or the music's so loud. The fights against the wardens and bosses are probably the worst cases for this when they and the Phantom Thieves are talking about their problems while the battles are going on. Can we maybe save this until the fight's over, fellas? I'm not going to be paying attention to the subtitles when I'm trying to survive. Strikers may not require you to have played Persona 5 or Royal prior to it, but good God, play either of them anyway. 1, because they're fantastic games regardless, and 2, because there are so many callbacks and references to Persona 5 that you're likely going to be left stumped if you haven't. And you also miss out on seeing the Phantom Thieves grow as a team as well as individuals. It doesn't really really matter that much at the end of the day, but it's something that I thought was worth mentioning. Whew, man, I've been talking about the plot and characters for a long while now, haven't I? Well, let's move the discussion over to the biggest change Strikers brings to the table, the new gameplay style. This is not at all the tried and true turn-based RPG kerfuffle you would come to expect by now. Every action you perform is now done instantly. No waiting for party members or enemies to attack. You can strike whenever you want, wherever you want, but the shadows will do the same to you. And it's all about building those reflexes, dodging at the appropriate times, and frustrate yourself when you get knocked over, because I swear turning the analog stick to get back up does nothing. Koei Tecmo have dealt with hack and slashers for a long time now thanks to Dynasty Warriors and previous crossover titles, so if you happen to like any of those games, then chances are you'll enjoy Strikers as well, though I'm sure Persona fans have already picked this up whether it's in the Warrior style or not. Even so, Koei Tecmo did a fantastic job with making Age of Calamity feel like it belongs in the Breath of the Wild universe, and now they've done it again with Strikers by making it feel like a true sequel to Persona 5. Everything from how the conversations are portrayed to the flashy style that Persona 5 is famous for all make a graceful return. Though I do have another nitpick with the menus in this game. Persona 5 and Royal were really good at making the animations in its menus quick and visually impressive, while also being practical to use. Nothing was interrupted, thus making navigating the menus smooth and easy. Strikers tries to do the same thing, but now the animations feel a tad too long, so anytime you need to swap equipment between characters, change the active party members or whatever, you need to wait for the animation to finish before you can carry on. It's not so bad at the start, but the time it takes does build up, which only gets a tiny bit annoying. The combat itself, as anticipated by Koei Tecmo, is fine-tuned and quite fun. Everyone has a basic melee attack they can use to inflict combos onto shadows, but they can also mix it with their personas who perform heavy attacks. Like in other Warriors games, the heavy attack is different depending on how many times you press the light attack button, but if you need to be more drastic, then holding the right bumper button brings up a list of persona skills to use on the shadows. These again come in both physical and magical variety, all suited to that character, except for Joker, who once more wields many different personas. That's another thing to mention. For the first time in the series, you can now fully control your party members, each with their own set of moves and fighting styles that can be improved further by killing enough shadows and raising their master arts. Okay, you technically could control everybody through their actions in the mainline Persona games, for the most part, but I'm talking about moving around, jumping across platforms, because yeah, there's a jump button in my new platforming now, which is super surreal, as well as ambushing shadows like in Persona 5. Stealth is once again a big factor to Strikers, and you're probably thinking, oh god, with a heavily combat-focused game, how are they gonna pull that off? Not too badly, actually. Unlike other Warriors games where the enemies would approach you as one giant horde, battles begin once you and the enemy cross swords, where a wave or two of them are ready to fight. Once the battle's over, you earn experience points, money, dropped items, and then you keep moving until you reach the next one. There may not be as many spots to duck behind cover and get the jump on shadows, but you do have other means of sneaking by, like using the new Phantom Rush ability to leap onto objects, which you can even take advantage of during combat, some of them also having elemental or explosive properties. It kinda reminds me of the flow motion mechanic from Kingdom Hearts, only not as loose. Boy, that's twice now I've brought up Kingdom Hearts in this video. Ever wanted to see the Phantom Thieves run over shadows with a skateboard? Well, your weird fantasy has come true. My absolute favorite way of sneaking though would be in the 4th and 6th jails, where you wait behind glass to ambush the enemy, and then when the time is right, boom, you smash your way in and take it on. That is tremendously satisfying. But it's not like you have to be completely stealthy, because simply hitting the shadows before they discover you with their limited vision is good enough. Get caught too many times, however, and you're immediately taken out of the jail, just like in Persona 5. But strangely, there's no passage of time upon leaving dungeons like the last 3 major Persona games have had. The jails have checkpoints scattered around to warp to other activated checkpoints, and exiting the jails automatically refills your HP and SP with no consequences. The Phantom Thieves barely even rest. It's like they take a 5-minute coffee break every so often, and then they're like, alright, that's enough now, let's get back to it, I've got so much paperwork that needs doing. It's really strange to say the least. Just as well that you don't waste time going back, because SP is rather limited in this game. Not Persona Q limited, but you can't exactly spam magic willy-nilly either. I never cast ailments because of it, but I get the feeling they wouldn't be that reliable anyway. Making constant trips between the real world and the jails are vital to clearing this game, as shadows once again have weaknesses you may want to exploit. Melee attacks will do the job just fine, but when facing against shadows that resist melee attacks like slimes, you're probably better off using magic instead. If anything, just to topple them over and have a chance to initiate one mores, where a fellow Phantom-Thief can follow up with another attack and you regain control of them. The guns are back if you need them as well, and they play by royal rules in that the ammo replenishes between every battle, and they're great for lowering health more easily on tougher shadows and bosses, on top of breaking their weakness gauges with a critical shot, the weakness gauges being the shield icons you see below their health, called down gauges. When they're all broken by casting spells or landing critical blows, you can activate all-out attacks, which work the same way as they've always done, and a string of them can be pulled off if multiple enemies are knocked over. If you do it to stronger shadows, the ones with their health displayed on the top of the screen, you can perform a sort of super all-out attack and do a great deal of damage. The down gauges are a bit difficult to see on regular enemies amidst all the action and particle effects, but again, it's not that big of a deal anyway. Panther's machine gun is what you want to use the most, however. It can chew through way much more health than the other thieves' guns, and there are plenty of bullets to spare. So if you're ever having a tough time with a certain section, whip out Panther and fire away. She'll get you results. Guns are a pretty good way of filling up the thieves' showtime meters too, where activating them administers a special attack for major pain, similar to Persona 5 Royal. Well, it doesn't look like a lot of damage, but believe me it is. The stronger shadows and bosses often just have a crap ton of health. Strikers is a surprisingly challenging game. Enemies can beat you up good in no time flat, but most of the time I'd say it's a tough but fair kind of challenge. Except for the analog stick wiggling I mentioned earlier, that's unreliable as hell. But I suppose you can always buy more upgrades for the Phantom Thieves via the bond system to compensate for it. This is basically the replacement for the confidant system. All social interactions you see between the Phantom Thieves is done during the story, with very, and I mean very few moments to hang out with anybody during your free time, and nobody else to talk to besides the Phantom Thieves. That alone may instantly turn you off of playing Strikers if you're a die-hard mainline Persona fan, but I think if they were going to exclude it, I'd rather have something like this than nothing at all. Bond experience can be acquired through certain means, like progressing enough in the story, fulfilling requests that reward you with bond experience, or cooking a new meal for the first time and sharing them with your friends, the latter two of which we'll talk about in a bit. When the XP bar is full, you'll earn a set amount of points to spend for upgrading your abilities, like an increase in power for your attacks, more money, more bullets for your guns, more bond experience given to you, health recovery while ambushing enemies. There's a lot to choose from, and the upgrades each have several layers to them, so you'll want to earn as much bond experience as you can, most of it coming from various requests added over time, where you revisit already cleared jails and complete different tasks. It's pretty basic stuff though, just kill a number of these enemies, fight this boss again, wonder what Persona's fascination is with scary bunnies lately, and gather these materials types of side quests. Nothing harmful, but nothing that interesting either. Though who was the asshole that created these ones where you have to get to a specific destination without alerting shadows? They're not that difficult, but man are they tedious. And it's so annoying when you get close to the end only to get caught by a spotlight that just switched on and you weren't quick enough to react. Or something like Alice's jail where you have to make a long trip back to the checkpoint from the dumpster area once the request is all done. What happened to go homes, guys? I could really use them. Although I think the worst requests have to be the ones that ask you to search for an item in an extremely precise spot from each jail, only giving you the vaguest of hints for where you need to search. Oh, I need to look for an area with windows in the Sendai jail, huh? Yeah, thanks. That really narrows it down. There are windows everywhere. I like the ones where you fight special shadows though. They're hard as balls, but you get to summon them as a stronger persona if you win. Be sure to cook as much as you can for some consumable HP and SP items. I don't think I've ever had to use them so readily in a Persona game like I have in this one, but they save your life big time. Each dish requires specific ingredients which either need to be located and bought in town by interacting with a number of stores, a couple of them also containing a new recipe for Ren to try out, or you can always buy some but not all ingredients through Sophia's online shop. Yet Takemi from the Tokyo clinic and Hawaii from the airsoft shop both seem to have closed due to plot convenience, which means we're stuck buying things from Sophia, but it works fine, so who cares. Speaking of the locations you visit all across Japan, none of them are as vast or wide as Tokyo was in Persona 5. They're each fairly small, only carrying up to 2 areas, and that includes Tokyo. All you get to explore there is Shibuya and Yongan-jaya. Kind of a bummer to be honest, as I think it could have led to more more social link conversations, but I suppose seeing how there's like 6 Japanese locations you go to, it somewhat balances out. I already miss Ren's sprint ability from Royal, however. Jeez, I forgot how slow he feels without it. Good thing I can still do it while inside the jails. The dungeons themselves are okay. I'm not expecting anything too in-depth since Strikers is a Warriors game first and foremost, but I'm glad they didn't just do a bunch of empty hallways like in Persona 3 and 4, or do something similar to previous crossover Warriors titles by simply placing a load of keeps and gates everywhere. There's a lot more structure to these dungeons than I had anticipated, which again does a good job at making Strikers feel like a legit sequel. That said, they can get a smidge repetitive, since the goals in each one are essentially the same. You locate 3 cores, defend Oracle for a bit while she's hacking into a terminal, listen to her puns that are hit and miss.
This is our chance. Wanna give him a last surprise?
You then storm the Monarchs' castle, send the calling card, and do the boss fight afterwards. They're fun, but they do sort of wear on you after a while. However, despite that, the combat never really gets boring, and Strikers isn't as lengthy as Persona 5, especially Royal. Without doing post-game stuff, but with all current requests done, my time came to 43 hours, and with post-game stuff done, it came to 47 hours. But I think that's a perfect amount. If it went on for 80 to 90 hours, or hell, 100 plus hours in Royal's case, that likely would have been way too much for a game like this, so I'm glad they decided to keep it shorter and sweeter. There's still a fair bit to do here though, regardless of the change in gameplay. There are the requests I mentioned before, even if they are rather mundane. You can tackle the new dire shadows, which there's one of in each jail, and they'll absolutely wreck you if you go in unprepared and are too low a level, but you can access them at any point in the game if you want the challenge. They're worth doing because you get a butt ton of experience and cash for it, outside of the treasure demons that you can also hunt down if you come across one. There are the post-game requests to do, most of them being yet another rematch with all of the bosses, only more difficult, leading to a new encounter with the Reaper, who's tough, but not quite as much as he usually is. And then there's Merciless Mode. Oh my god, Merciless Mode. The enemies do not let up here and will kill you very quickly. It also showers you with all sorts of incense to permanently increase your stats by a little bit, which I wasn't expecting to see return from Persona 1 and 2, but god damn is this mode still brutal. It isn't impossible by any means, but you've really gotta learn the art of dodging, and return to the real world frequently because you can't restart the battle if you die in this mode, only at the start of an infiltration or from the title screen. Good thing I've maintained my habit of saving constantly from my adventures into Tartarus. All this just to fully max out my bond upgrades and unlock Lucifer as a persona. To my surprise, there isn't even a New Game Plus exclusive boss. The Reaper is the only one that comes close. And be careful about defeating him too, because he heads straight into Merciless Mode after doing so, unable to return to that save you just spent hours upon hours working on. I suppose I haven't really talked about the Velvet Room for this game yet, have I? It functions pretty much how it has done previously. You merge multiple personas together to make a newer, more powerful one, but unexpectedly, the Persona Compendium is significantly smaller than in the other games, keeping mostly the popular ones, almost like a Velvet Room greatest hits. Something I do really love about this Velvet Room, however, and I can't believe Royal didn't include this, but normally in a Persona game you won't have an idea on what personas make what without already having the right personas you need in your arsenal, or by looking it up on the internet. Here though, not only do you get to see which personas you haven't fused yet without the essential personas already equipped, but when you click on that persona, it shows you the necessary personas needed to fuse it in the first place. Granted, they may be in a silhouette, but because I've played all of the other Persona games, I know who they are anyway, and even if you don't know who they are, then the shapes of their bodies should be a decent clue. Thank you, thank you. It's just a shame there's unfortunately a downside to this, because a lot of the stronger, higher level personas can only be fused with weaker personas that have a higher level themselves. Like, you're seriously expecting me to have a level 40 Jack-o'-lantern and a level 40 Jack Frost to fuse King Frost, even though they're two early game personas? This can be done more easily if your persona stock is currently full, and you obtain more of these Joker masks that randomly drop from enemies, which then get converted to persona points, or PP for short. Oh come on, there has to be a better abbreviation for that. Afterwards, that PP can be exchanged to Lavenza to instantly level up a persona if you have enough, but the amount you need increases further and further with each level they're raised to, so that means buying a persona from the compendium and deleting them from more PP. I found that Kukulain gave me the most PP, but I don't know who actually does. Either way, this is a really annoying and unnecessary change. I shouldn't be restricted from using these awesome new personas just because my PP is too short. Oh god, I ran into that one.
There we have it, that's Persona 5 Strikers. In my opinion, this is probably the best spin-off the series has gotten so far, right above Q2. Koei Tecmo have treated this and Persona 5 with a lot of respect. Although the gameplay style is vastly different, the quality is so good that it can still be seen as an outstanding follow-up. Now, is it as amazing as Persona 5 or Royal? No, it's got a few hiccups here and there, but a lot of the issues I do have with the game are mostly minor, and as a sequel to one of the most popular JRPGs lately, Strikers is pretty damn good.
Like I said though, you've probably already got this if you are a Persona fan, especially Persona 5, so of course you know this, but then why would you be watching this video? If you're still on the fence about Strikers, then all I can say at this point is just wait for it to go on sale, but I think you really should take a look at it someday, even if you're only a fan of hack and slashers and not Persona. It's quite the unusual Warriors game as well compared to other crossover titles we've seen at this time, due to its much heavier focus on story and proper dungeon layouts. Still, this is no doubt one of the best Warriors titles I've currently played. I'd maybe tie this with Fire Emblem Warriors since they're enjoyable for different reasons. The action's a lot of crazy fun. The story, while certainly not perfect, is entertaining enough for a Persona game. The idea alone of the Phantom Thieves reuniting was a good selling point for me. And oh my goodness, this soundtrack. It's not quite as grand as Persona 5's or Royals, but damn, there's some awesome stuff here. There are a number of remixes of older tunes with that Warriors guitar style, but the newer stuff is just as fantastic. The battle themes get you nice and pumped up for each fight. Daredevil's very fitting for when you're breaking into the Monarchs castle. Counter-Strike is excellent for when things get intense late in the game. And sweet unholy mother of Sataniel, I love this game's remix of Blooming Villain. Why did they release Dancing in Starlight so soon? I always have this weird relationship with new songs by Persona 5 singer Lin Inaizumi though. It usually takes some time for me to really get into them. This is how it mostly happens.
Well, this new Lin song sounds good, but I don't know if I'll remember it at all.
I'll never forget to show my true colors. I'll never forget to question destiny. But now, I think it's finally time to put the Phantom Thieves and Persona 5 to bed. They've had a great run and there's been tons of laughs and wonderful times together, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. I believe the Persona 5 name has now officially run its course, and we should put our attention on the next major Persona entry. I'll always be up for anything Persona 5 related, but I also don't want it to be milked too much. It's okay to do it a little, but I think having a dancing game, a crossover title, a re-release with new additions, a spin-off / sequel, an anime, and cameos in other games are enough exposure for the Phantom Thieves to get away with. I don't work for ATLUS, they're free to do whatever they want, but that's just my opinion. For now, farewell Phantom Thieves, it's been one heck of a ride, but it's something I'll never forget.
Okay, now we're done with Persona until the next one, for real this time, although I guess if we wanted to keep things going, I could probably talk about the animes or something. That'd be a little different for me. Would you guys want to see that at all? Should I follow ATLUS's route to make a survey asking if you really want me to do videos on them? Well, aside from that, I suppose all that's really left for me to review is the Shin Megami Tensei games, which we've got the HD remaster of Nocturne coming next month. Expect to see that at the very least, but I know very little about Shin Megami Tensei, so it'll be quite the learning experience for me. Well, thank you all very much for watching my Persona videos anyway, and I hope to see you again for more when the time comes. Keep yourself safe and healthy, and I will hopefully see you next time. Right above Q2... forgot my line. Right above Q2, but god damn it. Although the gameplay is vastly different gosh sake. Am I just suffering heat stroke from this cosplay or something? Although the gameplay style is vastly different... What's my line? Koei Tecmo have treated...